Please welcome Raymond S.
All right, gonna get situated here. Gotta put that there. Hi, everyone. I'm Raymond, and I'm an alcoholic. Hi. And I've been kept sober since July 23rd, 1988. And that is truly a miracle. And wow, this is so cool. Congratulations, you guys. This is such a great new home you have. It's a pleasure to be here. Just a few things out of the way. I'm glad that I can see Sally, because I told Sally if I'm still in Amarillo in 20 minutes, she has to give me the hangman, get out. I lived 18 years in Amarillo and I couldn't wait to get out. And usually when I tell my story, I spend my whole time in Amarillo. So, I mean, please. But yeah, so, that's where it all started for me in Amarillo, look, nothing really original about how I felt growing up. I always felt different. I always felt like an outsider. I just felt like something was wrong. Something was wrong with me that I just kind of knew that I felt different from everyone. Now I think we all feel different from everyone, but it occurred to me when I was thinking about that just the other day. I was thinking about this, and it's just like, I think everybody has those feelings. It's just I attached to that. And that is what I ran with, that I was different, and not in a good way, Now I can see, oh, I'm different and I'm fine, I was about 10 years sober when I went back to Amarillo one time. And all of a sudden it occurred to me, it was like, I don't belong here, and it's okay, And ever since then, I've been able to enjoy my time in Amarillo, but for short stints. So anyway, so that's what it was like growing up. I grew up in a household. My father was a practicing alcoholic for the first 10 years of my life. He got sober when I was 10. My mother struggled with mental illness, and for a lot of my childhood, it went undiagnosed. She would just start crying, and some people would come around and whisper, and then she would get whisked off to a hospital. And my sister and I have an older sister, and we would just kind of catch glimpses of what was going on, or little snippets of what was going on by what the adults were talking about around us. We never got the full story. So it was a mixed bag in my house. It's funny. I never knew what it was going to be like from one day to the next. And as scary as that was as a child, you know what? It's one of those things, it served me very well now, because I can walk into a room and assess it immediately. Okay, I'm good here. Okay, everybody, you're here, good. Okay, I'm fine. I've got that, it gave me that ability. So it wasn't all bad. So that's how it was. I have to say, I found my voice actually at about 10 years old. Somebody noticed that I could sing, and they told me that I needed to be on stage. And actually it was my dad. It was at the very, yeah. Dad, my sister and I were very much like the front people for our family because my dad was literally, there was no way to hide the fact that my dad was a falling down drunk. And so my sister and I were the ones that were pushed out in front to make everything look okay. So in 1977, when it was announced that the opening show of the Amarillo Little Theater would be Oliver, my dad set out to make sure that I was playing the role of Oliver. And so we spent a good bit of the summer in our den with Dad sitting in his chair with his bourbon, and I would have to go on and put the needle on the record. Remember records? I had to put the needle on the record, and I would sing "Where Is Love" over and over and over again. And now I'd like to sing it for you. So I had to sing it over and over again. And it was so I couldn't really tell, did I want this or did he want this? I think he wanted it more than I did, but you know what? It was great. So blah, blah, blah. We went through, and the reason I'm telling you this is because it's something that's kind of been on my mind recently. And so we get through the audition process. It's kind of clear that it's between me and one other person. And I felt, we got through the audition and we got through the callbacks and all that stuff. And it was when it was finally all done, it just needed to be a decision. We left and we went to eat dinner. And as I remember, we pulled into the parking lot of Myers Fried Chicken. And I just remember my dad, my sister and my mother had been there and everybody had been there and they were like telling me how good I did and I was really like, wow, maybe I did too good. And I just remember my dad saying, well, I've done a lot for that theater. They owe it to me. You will get that part. And now I look back and that's like the moment that it broke, that something inside of me broke, because it was, and I'm not saying it was Dad's fault, he was a drunk. It's not that. I'm not blaming my dad, but what it did to me, how I took that, was that this has nothing to do with you. It doesn't matter if you're any good. What you just felt like, that you did good, it doesn't really matter. You could have really sucked and you would still get the part because this is about him and it's not about me. And so that set up a lot of years of feeling like a fraud. I got the part. And people still talk about my performance 942 years later. So I think I was pretty good. But anyway, so that was it. But the reason I tell that story is because it was the very end of my dad's drinking. And I had already gotten the part. We'd started rehearsals. My uncle came from Fort Worth to Amarillo and sat down with my dad and said, you're dying, and there are things that an uncle can do. An uncle can, I can walk Maria down the aisle when she gets married. I can be there at graduations when Raymond and Maria both graduate. He said, because you're going to miss all that. He went into the hospital, was told that if he didn't stop drinking within a few weeks, he would be dead. His liver was that far gone. And so, this was 1976 and 77. And, there were treatment centers and IOPs and blah, 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 and all that stuff. You had to be shipped off. And they wanted to ship him off somewhere. But he said, no, I can't go because I would miss Raymond's opening in Oliver. So he agreed. Some people came from the AA, and they were actually people that he knew. And they came in to his hospital room, and he agreed that he would, when he got out, he would start going to meetings. And so that's what he did. My dad died 34 years sober, coming up on 10 years. And that was it. He always said that his treatment was going to AA. His early days, it was going to AA at night and then coming over and sitting in the back row of the theater and watching me rehearse. He always said that was his treatment. So so there. So the theater, I found the theater, and when I found the theater, I found theater people. And theater people were fun, and theater people drank and did all kinds of other things. So I kind of became like the mascot, really, from the time I was 10 years old to the time that I graduated from high school. I was in a show there at the Amarillo Little Theater. And about that time, they started a children's theater that became very strong and is still going to this day. And a few people from that from that school have actually landed on Broadway and in films. And so yay Amarillo, they got it going. The theater was my home and it was my escape. And I think it really saved me because being a little gay boy in Amarillo, Texas who liked to sing and dance, there weren't a whole lot of places where I felt like I fit in. But the theater was one. And I'm really grateful for that, even though that's where I found a lot. That's where I found, we did a lot of drinking there. But the first drink that I had was when I was 13 years old. Well, I'd had sips and blah, 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 and all that stuff. But the first drink that I remember that really, what I say counted, was on the night of my grandfather's 80th birthday. And it was just our family in a private room, and it was lovely. And we got there, and the cocktail waitress, I was with my cousins who were all older, and the cocktail waitress came around and asked what everybody wanted to drink. And my cousin said scotch, and my other cousin said scotch. And they looked at me, and I said, I'll have scotch. So, and they brought it to me, this 13-year-old kid. I drank that, and then I remember at dinner there was wine with dinner. And I can't say how much I had. I don't think I had a lot because, my parents were there, and my dad was sober at this point. So anyway, we were drinking wine. I just remember at one point in the evening, it was just like all of a sudden the lights were like twinkling, and everybody at the table was laughing. They were laughing, and it occurred to me that they were laughing at something that I said. And they weren't laughing at me. They thought I was funny. And I was like, oh, this is it. This is how you're supposed to feel. And I remember leaving that party that night. I didn't get drunk, but I remember leaving that party that night thinking, my cousin gets married in a month. That's the next time I'll be able to feel this way. At 13. I look at kids now that are 13, and I'm just like, oh, it's like baby, and that's when it all started for me. Obviously I wasn't a daily drink at that point, but when it was around, I was on. I was that kind of drunk that, would start and never knew where it ended up. I thought that was the whole point of drinking, that you drank and then, woo, let's see where this goes. And at the beginning that I guess was kind of fun. It didn't stay that way. I got into a lot of trouble, but the drinking, where was I going with that? I don't know. Anyway, the drinking, where was I? I totally blanked. Oh, well. Am I still in Amarillo? Let's move. Okay, I got... da 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 da. So anyway, I drank all the way through high school. Made it most of the time I was spending in the theater. I had a way of charming people, and I charmed our assistant principal in high school. And I would go into her office to sign out, just sign out, while she was like screaming and yelling at somebody for cutting school, who had cut class. But I would just go and sign out and be like, out. And I just got away with a lot, but I spent most of the time at the theater. So, like I said, it was my saving grace. So I graduated, and I knew I wanted to go to an art school, but something told me that I wasn't really ready yet. I had spent a summer at a very prestigious. I did a summer course at a very prestigious university that has one of the top theater programs in the country, and even though it was great and all that, something in me knew that I wasn't quite ready to do that yet. So I decided to go to school in New Orleans. Woohoo! New Orleans. And that was an experience. That was an education in itself. Because I had been such an experienced drinker at this point. I remember that first week of orientation. My dorm room was right across the hall from the bathroom. And that first week of orientation, you would just hear kids like running down the hall and hitting that door, and bleh, I'd be like, oh, amateurs. But New Orleans, it was fun until it wasn't. That's really where I first started thinking, I wonder if I'm an alcoholic. Oh, no. You were raised by an alcoholic. You have all of the isms. I'd been to enough of these meetings to get just enough information to be very dangerous to myself. But I remember having that's the first time that it really occurred to me, was when I was in New Orleans. I found other things in New Orleans. My freshman year was basically, the hall on my dorm was known that you could get anything you wanted. On campus, it was just known that our dorm hall, you could get anything. My roommate was selling speed. The guy next door to us was selling cocaine and weed. The guy across the hall was selling hash. The guy, it was all that stuff. So I was there, and I was there for it, I remember early on in this cocaine thing, my cocaine period, I remember saying to my roommate, I was like, this stuff talks to me. He was like, what? I was like, yeah, it like says, oh, you can do more, you can get more. And I will never forget the look on his face. He was like, I wouldn't tell anybody that if I were you. I was like, oh, okay. All right, guess it doesn't have the same effect on you. So anyway, I'm telling the story because it was John reminded me at dinner. So I spent that first year at Tulane was cocaine and speed and drinking every couple of days to all the time really. But the drinking and the NyQuil was really to get me to sleep for maybe a day or so. So that was my thing. I came home from my freshman year of college. I was about as tall as I am now, and I weighed 125 pounds. I do not weigh 125 pounds. I do not weigh 225 pounds. So yeah, it was pretty. It was pretty. My cheekbones were like out to here. My hip bones like entered the room 5 minutes before I did. Oh my God, I found a videotape of a show that I did when I was at Tulane. And it's like I mean, it's like the Scarecrow. I mean, it's just like, where's Raymond? Oh, he just turned sideways. I mean, it was crazy. Oh, and hair. I had big hair. Yeah, it was the 80s. So anyway, I came home from high school. I mean, it came home from high school. Let's not go back there. I came home from college that first year. My dad had followed me back from New Orleans in his car. I was driving behind him in my car, and every time we stopped, I was in the bathroom like snorting cocaine. So I had just enough to kind of get me home because I knew my friend Kyle was at home, was back in Amarillo, and she was older than me. She was one of the theater people, and she would have lots of cocaine. So I only needed to take enough for me to get home. So we hit Dallas to spend the night, and my dad calls in to check in with my mom, and she says, oh my God, Keith Taylor's been trying to get a hold of you all day. Kyle, his daughter, my cocaine connection, Kyle got on a plane and went out and tried to check herself into Betty Ford. Well, this was the 80s. Nobody could get into Betty Ford unless you had an Oscar, you know. But Kyle thought she could. So anyway, so I was like, oh, great. I wasn't concerned about Kyle. I was like, fuck, my cocaine connection just went to Betty Ford? They wouldn't even let her in. So anyway, that was it. But we got home that night. I dropped everything on my floor, and I woke up the next morning and everything had disappeared off my floor. I thought, well, I just need a little bit to get me going in the morning. So, just a little bit, because I've got things to do today. So I start looking. It was in my shorts pocket. Where are my shorts? My shorts are gone. Where is everything? I throw on a robe and I'm running down the stairs. And our housekeeper, I was like, I didn't even say hi to her. I was just like, where are my clothes? Where are my clothes? And she was like, well, I just picked up everything and I put it in the washer. I was like, the pockets, where, did you check the pockets? She never checked the pockets. She said, she was like, well, whatever I find, I just threw away. I was like, the trash, where's the trash? She goes, well, I already took it out to the dump. All of a sudden, I was in the dumpster, in my bare feet, in my robe. I just remember lots of cut grass. There was lots of cut grass in there. And I was digging, trying to find that little origami paper thing that we used to I didn't find it. I'm sure it was in the washing machine. But it just, something hit me as I was standing there in the dumpster with all the cut grass behind the house. I was like, ooh, this is weird. This is weird. Maybe I shouldn't do that stuff anymore. And I really didn't know where to find it, so that was it. So I spent that rest of that summer really detoxing from cocaine and speed and drinking. I would sleep all day, and then I would wake up and oddly enough, we ate dinner a lot after Dad's meetings, so we would eat dinner a lot after the meeting with all of his friends in AA. And I loved you AA people. You guys were so much fun. You told great stories. You were very interesting. I just thought it was really sad that you couldn't drink like I could. It was really sad. But you were a lot of fun. So anyway, I went back to New Orleans for one more semester, and it was really probably the first big bad depression. I think I'd had depression from a very early age, periods of it, but this is the first time it really got bad. And of course I was drinking, so that really helped. I wasn't doing the cocaine. Don't think I was doing the speed. I was just miserable that whole semester. And I thought it was because I wasn't doing what I really wanted to do, which was to go to acting school. So I sat out for another semester, and that next semester, and I went back to Amarillo and I started auditioning for drama schools around the country. And I was just telling this story to some friends who are not in the program this afternoon about my semester I spent waiting tables at Bennigan's in Amarillo, Texas. And I would do ecstasy to have a good day at work. Yes, so especially on busy nights. So I would show up at that table just like, hi, want some fried cheese? You know, and I mean, it was just like they were like sitting there with their menus like, holy shit. I was on fire. So anyway, that's kind of how I got through that semester. But I auditioned for drama schools, and I actually got into the one that I wanted to go to. I had to work for it, but I got into the one that I wanted to go to, and I thought, okay, everything's going to be fine now. Everything's going to be fine now because I'm finally going to be doing what I want to do. I got there in the fall, and I was like, this is it. I'm here. I have arrived. My people, you know, and it was great for about 2 months. And that's when the voices started kicking in. You're a fraud. They made a big mistake. These people are all much better than you are. You don't belong here. It's only a matter of time before they figure it out and you're out of here. And then what the fuck are you gonna do? You know? So the only thing that I knew would take those voices away was the alcohol, you know? And so I started drinking pretty regularly. Pretty regularly because I could, and it was this art school campus. I mean, you know, everybody was doing what I was doing. So I got through that first year barely. I remember at the end of that year we had evaluations, and it was a very like kind of cutthroat school back then. It was like, I mean, they would regularly cut people. Particularly after the second year. That was the big sophomore slaughter, they called it. So this was after the freshman year, and I got put on notice that things needed to improve the next semester. And I was kind of like, I mean, I knew, they weren't telling me anything that I didn't know. But I remember I left that evaluation, and a little while later I ran into my favorite teacher. My favorite professor stopped me, and she kind of pulled me over to the side, and she said, there is something. She was Turkish. She is Turkish. She's fabulous, and she's very like passionate. And she was like, and she said, there is something deep inside of you that is wanting to come out and express itself, but there is something that's keeping that down, and it's your job this summer to figure out what that is. And I was just like, oh crap, because I knew what she was talking about. I just didn't know what it was. So I spent that summer in North Carolina in this apartment that had no air conditioning. It was my first summer in North Carolina. None of my friends were there. I had one friend that was there, and she was working at a restaurant. I got really miserable. I was drinking to pass out every night. I didn't, I couldn't get off my sofa. I thought that I was going crazy. Drinking was really the only thing drinking was doing something, right? If you're drinking, you're doing something. The other thing that I did, because I started drinking when I was 13, I always hid my booze in the closet. I was living alone in this apartment, and my booze was in the closet, just because that's where you keep it, isn't it? And so anyway, things got pretty bad. I started making phone calls to people. I called my dad first, and I said, something's really wrong. I'm really miserable. And he was like, well, it's because you're in North Carolina in the middle of the summer in that god-awful apartment without any air conditioning. Go buy an air conditioner. I'll pay for it. I was like, okay. So I found an air conditioner, a window unit, and I bought it, and I went and I put it in the window, and I turned it on, and I sat there for a while, and I called my dad, and he was like, I said, well, I got the air conditioner. He goes, well, I bet you feel better, don't you? And I was like, well, now I'm just kind of cold and miserable. Dad this was like 11 years sober at this point. And that was his solution, the air conditioner. I started calling around to a couple of other close family friends who all happened to be, oddly enough, in the field of alcoholism treatment and recovery. And they all kept asking me the same question, which was, are you drinking? And I was like, ugh, what? It's like, am I drinking right now? No. Am I drinking more than you know that I drink? No. How dare you? But finally, one person suggested that I call this man named Keith Lewis, who we all knew. He was a very dear man, and he was running a treatment center in Fayetteville, just a couple of hours away from where I was in Winston-Salem. So I called Keith, and I said, something's wrong. And he said, how soon can you get here? And I said, well, I can come in the morning. I didn't know. I thought it was time for me to start dealing with my father's alcoholism. I was an adult child. And, that's why it was all his fault. So I need to go to adult children therapy. That was very big in the 80s, too. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But anyway, so I'm going to accelerate here. Promise. I'm out of Amarillo, though. I got down to Keith Lewis's. Things started unraveling pretty fast. I remember I was driving. He lived kind of outside of Fayetteville on a golf course, and I was driving to his house, and it was one of those, like, the sky, it was like late afternoon, it was like the sky was like that beautiful blue, and I was kind of driving through this cornfield, and I was just like, this is beautiful. But I couldn't feel it. I was so not there. Nothing was getting in. And I just remember saying to myself, I was like, God, something's got to change. Something has got to change. So I walked into Keith's house that night and sat down, and he was like, so how you doing? And I was like, well, I'm not good. And he asked me a few more questions, and then he said, Raymond, are you worried about your own drinking? And nobody had put it to me that way. Are you worried about your own drinking? And I just went, yes. And it was just like, whew. I was like, oh, wait, could that be what this is? Could that be what the problem is? And then my next thought was, oh shit, you said that to the wrong person, but it was just like, because I thought I was going crazy. So 3 days later, I was on a junk farm in the middle of Pennsylvania. Did I say 3 months? I meant 3 days. 3 days later, I got shipped off to this rehab in Pennsylvania. Although I do want to say, the night before I left to go to Fayetteville to go see Keith, my friend, one of my friends in my class, came over after she got off her shift, and I had already started drinking margaritas, and I'm sure there was some scotch in there, and then she came and bought a bottle of wine. We drank that. I still wasn't drunk. I had to go to the store and buy beer, and then I passed out. And the next morning I woke up, and that was the day I was going to see Keith, and that was July 23rd, 1988. And I had no idea, I had no intention of that being my last night of drinking. I didn't even think that was the problem. But that was it, oddly enough. And I found that out up in Pennsylvania. I remember I'd been there for 2 weeks with all you lovely people thinking, oh, you guys are so bad. I'm so glad you're here. Oh, I'm so glad you're here getting the help that you need. I'm just so grateful to be a part of it. I was there for 2 weeks until it occurred to me in a group meeting that I was an alcoholic. And I went running up to one of my good friends there in the line at lunch, and I was like, Michael, I'm an alcoholic. He was like, no shit, you're on a drunk farm in the middle of Pennsylvania. And he was like, we're all alcoholics. I was like, I know, but I know I'm one now. So it was like crazy. 21 years old, God love him. So that was the journey. I was pretty sure that at the end of that, they were going to tell me, go home, take a year off school, go back to Amarillo, start going to meetings, get that first year under your belt. And they said, you're going right back to school, you're going to get a sponsor, you're going to start going to meetings, and you're going to start doing the deal. I was like, oh, okay. So that's what I did. I went back to North Carolina. School started about a week later. I got a sponsor. Actually, the night before I went to rehab, I went to a meeting, and because there was a party downstairs underneath, below me, and I'd already signed up for rehab. I wasn't going to start drinking now. It wouldn't have been nice to show up drunk at rehab. That's bad form, I guess. So I'd gone to a meeting that night before I left in North Carolina, and there was this lovely lady there who chaired the meeting, and after the meeting, she said, give me a call when you get back. And I said, okay. So that was Margot, my first sponsor. And during that first year, it was a tough year that first year. I was in the middle of sophomore slaughter. We were under the magnifying glass, definitely. And I was trying to stay sober. And I was going to class all day. Good night. That's fine, honey. I'm sure it's much more interesting and much more important. I was going to school all day. We had rehearsal all night. And I would get home and I would call Margot because Margot was up. She would take a thermos of coffee to bed with her and sit there and talk to her alcoholics all night long, and I was one of them. And I would call and I'd be like, oh, this happened and this happened. You won't believe what he said and then she said this. Blah, blah, blah. And I would just stop, and she'd say, did you eat today? And I'd be like, who had time to eat? Didn't you just hear what I said? It was like she started teaching me the things that I needed to learn how to take care of myself. And, and more than anything, Margot just loved me. And, those of you who know me, Margot, that's that first sponsor. I spent my first 3 years of sobriety with Margot. She taught me everything I needed to know. And I hear her voice so strongly in my head these days. Always. She's just always with me. And I'll tell you that in a second. Here's the thing. When you've been sober for 33 years, the most interesting part is out of Amarillo and out of North Carolina. But that's where I always get stuck. I was 3 years sober when I graduated. I survived the sophomore slaughter. And I graduated, and I went to New York. And I was 3 years sober. I thought that school, having graduated from this prestigious school, that shouldn't I feel more confident? And I don't know what I was thinking. People go to college and then they get a job. Well, when you go to acting school, you go to college and then you go to New York and it's good luck, And actually by that time I was kind of burned out. I'd been doing this since I was 10 years old. It was all I ever knew that I wanted to do. It was all everybody knew everybody, my whole life, I'd always known that I was going to be this actor and blah, 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 and all that stuff. Well, I wasn't so sure anymore. But I went to New York. There's nothing sadder than a reluctant actor in New York, let me just tell you. Yeah, I mean, I'll audition, but I don't really want to do Music Man in Duluth. Oh, I'm playing Maid Marian in just a little while, so I got to get out there pretty soon. I'm almost on. No, so I don't. But I got to New York, and really, I had been waiting my whole life to get there. I loved New York. New York was and still is a very magical place for me. Things happen when I go there. I don't ever want to live there again, but it's still magical. I was there for 15 years. When I showed up there, I was 3 years sober. I showed up at Lambda on the Upper West Side, and those men, primarily men, some pretty amazing women too, they just gathered me in. And this was 1991. It was, it was the AIDS days. I got there in time to see some really, really, really bad sick people. And, those that had survived, those people in the room, there was like an armor that they had, there was, but I have to say, so the man that was my first sponsor there, that I asked to be my first sponsor, his sponsor was dying. His sponsor was dying of AIDS, and he was actually one of the founders of the Lambda Group, the Lambda West Group in New York on the Upper West Side, and he was in St. Vincent's dying the whole time that I knew him. He's one of my angels. Because I was new in town, I would work. I was working through a temp agency. I would work. I would go to a meeting. We'd go to eat dinner after, and then I was like, "Now what am I supposed to do?" And my sponsor Bill said, "Just get on a train and go down and sit in Frank's room. Just go sit with Frank. He'd love to see you." I later found out that it was because Frank liked me and the tight green jeans that I wore. But you know what? Frank loved me. We took a meeting. The first time I met Frank, we took a meeting to his room because he was so sick. I walked into that room, and it was a room. There were like probably 12 of us from Lambda in that meeting, and those guys, I hadn't even met some of those men. I was so new to the city. Some of those people are like my core, those men that I met in Frank's room, and Frank taught me what it was to live the whole time that he was dying. I think I would have been like, "Who is this? Like, I'm dying. Get out of here, new person. I don't know you." He was like, "Calm." I started therapy, and when I moved to New York, everything like shook. The tree shook. I started therapy, and some things were coming up. And I just remember one night I went up to Frank's, and I was just like spewing, and he just said, and he had thrush, he could barely speak, and he just looked at me with these big eyes, and he said, "I'm so angry with your father," like that. And Frank gave me permission to be angry, I've gotten everything that I need in here, still to this day. Lots happened. My dreams, my big Broadway dreams, all came true. They all came true, just not the way that I thought they would. But I got to be a part of a community that I wanted to be a part of since that little 10-year-old boy on the stage in Amarillo, Texas. He got to be a part of that. And a lot happened in New York, a lot of great things. And I never thought I would leave. And then I came to see my family one Christmas and started coming to Lambda for meetings. And I just remember sitting there thinking, I saw something there. I saw how the people here were so invested in each other's lives and in each other's recoveries. And I wasn't feeling that anymore in New York. I mean, New York AA is great, but it's different, you know? And a few months later, I just, no, on Christmas Eve, I had lunch with you guys. And that night, I went back to my sister's house and I said, I think I'm going to move here. She was like, really? 2 months later, I was here. And I never looked back. I love living here. I love being a part of this community. I love the people here. My life today is not perfect, but it's my life. It's you guys have taught me how to live, no matter what goes on. I know I'm going to be okay. You know, I'm so grateful that I got sober when I did, and that I've been sober all this time. I work now with people who are new in recovery. That's what I do now, and I just am. It's such a gift. It's just such a gift. It makes me so. It's humbling to think that of everything that I've been given, and now I hopefully get to pass that on to other people in this program, the people that I sponsor. I mean, and just my dear friends, and that's my life. And if this is as good as it gets, I'm fine with that. But this program has taught me that the best is always yet to come. It's always yet to come. And it's just my job to stay right here, and trust that I'm going to get whatever I need no matter what happens. You guys have taught me that. You guys have shown me that. Because I watched you do it. I watch you do it. When I watch you do it, I know that I can do it too. And you tell me how you did it. I don't know any other place on earth where that kind of unconditional love and really that kind of unconditional understanding exists. And I'm just so grateful to be a part of it. And I'm so grateful to be a part of all of you. Thank you for letting me be here. And I love you. Thanks.